Oh, let's go. I got this. What the fuck, man? Ladies and gentlemen, girls, Tomesh in the flesh. And today, in this notebook, I have some incredible stuff for you today. Elon Musk, Lucid, two guys named Steven, and one guy named Tom Lee. A lot to talk about, trust me. This is way better than my intro. Let's hit it. So first of all, let's talk about Elon Musk. Elon Musk has sent a termination letter to Twitter. Yes, a termination letter at this point is pretty much like telling somebody you've broken up after you haven't spoke for 2 years. I mean, it's pretty obvious at this point, let alone it's probably like the 7th or the 8th termination letter he already sent. So at this point, he's going to becoming like a bot, just spamming Twitter with termination letters. Now, the reason I think he filed this letter is because this new whistleblower thing is actually becoming very interesting. So we heard that Elon Musk and his legal team have now subpoenaed Peter Mudge, or whatever his name is, who's actually a very reputable guy. I checked on this guy. I did my research. This Mudge guy, he's for real. He's like a super duper global, world-class cybersecurity guy. I mean, you don't get the, head security guy at Twitter for nothing, right? So this super duper very qualified guy is now being subpoenaed by Elon Musk's legal team. And now they're going to use what he has to say to establish a whole new case we haven't heard about. So far, the whole Elon versus Twitter thing was, the bots. Nobody bought the bot. Nobody bought the bot. You got it? Nobody bought the bot, saying, obviously, nobody thinks there's a material adverse effect here, which something that has to impact the valuation of Twitter by like 50% for Elon to cancel. So he had no case. That's before this whole Mudge thing actually mudged up. Because with this Mudge thing, it becomes much more interesting. The case has opened up to a claim that there was fraud. Because even if you waive due diligence, even if the company basically was sold as is, if somebody defrauded you intentionally to sell you a piece of shit, that waiver of due diligence does not apply. It's a whole different enchilada right here. And trust me, this is a serious matter. Now, look, just to be clear on this, I think Elon Musk is trolling the entire world with this Twitter case, and he's not obviously taking it seriously for one reason and one reason alone. Elon Musk knows, first of all, he can't afford it, despite what you guys think. He can't afford it, let alone he will make money off it. If somehow he gets out of it with the Chancery Court of Delaware forcing him to buy this company, he's still going to make a lot of money off it. You know exactly what's going to happen. He's going to take Twitter. He's going to become a behemoth of a social media money machine. The dude has a cult following. They buy flamethrowers, whiskey bottles. I mean, the man sold, I think, a dune buggy for kids. I mean, whatever he touches becomes gold. So even if they force him to buy Twitter, he's still going to make a lot of money off it. He just doesn't want to because he has too much to do as it is. SpaceX, like 17 ex-wives, Tesla, all the other companies trying to set up, basically getting a tan. You've seen how he looked like? He looks as white as a ghost. I mean, he has so much to do already. I mean, at this point, he's like, I don't really want this shit. But if they force him, trust me, Twitter is going to be a money machine. So I wouldn't bet against him. And that's why he's not really taking this shit too seriously. Moving on to another company that should not be taken seriously despite taking itself too seriously, kind of the mirror image of Elon. It's kind of funny, right? Lucid and Elon are correlation -1. Elon is not taking him seriously, the richest man on earth, the best execution on earth. On the other hand, Lucid, with 1,200 cars in history, is basically taking itself way too seriously, as if they're the new Mercedes-Benz or whatever. Like, my guy, you sold 1,200 cars in your existence. Sit your ass down. So basically, Lucid, which is pretty much a marketing company, it's not even an EV company. Come on, it's just like hot air. Lucid, after burning almost $3 billion last year, is now down to the last $2.5 billion this year. And surprise, surprise, they need more money. So they're raising $8 billion more money. Now look, if you burned $2.5 billion last year and you sold 1,200 cars, I mean, is this business really viable? I don't know. But who in the world will give you $8 billion? Oh my God. Now look, even if I think that Lucid is for real, even if you think that Lucid will make great cars, fine. We're talking about a company that made 1,200 cars. Ignore that. Let's say Lucid come out and they're like the new DeLorean. Oh wait. Bad example. If they come out and like the new Mercedes, right? They come out with $150,000 car, which is what on average this Lucid fart costs, right? If $150,000 car, let's say they scale it down to 100,000. They drop 50,000 off it. $100,000 four-door sedan in the recession year 2023, and in the recession year 2024 probably. Who's gonna buy $100,000 four-door sedans in the recession year? I don't think a lot of clients out there are looking for that car. I think the market cap for it is very limited, and they're not even anywhere near the execution levels of Tesla. I mean, why would you buy this piece of fart when Tesla has the Model S Plaid and there's a lot of other competitors out there? I honestly don't understand Lucid. I think it's some sort of a weird troll. I don't know. Don't understand it. Now, a quick note, Tom Lee from Fundstrat is now saying that the market has overreacted to Jackson Hole's symposium and the comments by the Fed chair. Now, look, obviously, Tom Lee is the constant bull. He's always bullish on the market. He always thinks everybody's overreacting. He always sees this bull run. He's kind of became the meme. He's kind of like, the bullish Gordon Johnson of the market. But first of all, he's not an idiot. Number two, he's been right quite often, despite lately having a few misses. But more importantly, I actually agree with what he's saying. Because let's look at it objectively. What happened in Jackson Hole? Jerome Powell comes out. Let's just call him Jim Powell. Fuck it. Jim Powell comes out and is like, yo, I'm going to say exactly the same thing I've said before. I'm going to do it 8 minutes and I'm not going to take any questions. And I'm just basically going to repeat myself. And then the entire market went like, oh, did he just say it? Guys, he literally just repeated himself. There's nothing in that speech that we haven't heard before. I mean, come on. Now, obviously, Tom Lee and I agree on this. I think the market has overreacted to what he said because there was nothing really there. The proof is not going to be in the speeches, not in the words. The proof is going to be in the pudding, my guy. What will they do? Will they actually be the new Volcker or the new Joker? Let's find out. So I'm with Tom Lee on this one. Now, look, finally, we have to talk about two guys named Steven. Now, both of them has a last name that kind of makes me laugh. On the one hand, we have from Johns Hopkins, Stephen Hanke. Yes, this is Professor Hanke, last name Panky. Professor Hanky Panky. So Professor Hanky Panky is saying that Jerome Powell doesn't have a clue what he's talking about. And I actually agree with him. So basically what he's saying, look, guys, Mr. Powell up there on the stage is basically still talking about supply chain shocks and stuff like that, while the entire world knows, at least the ones who understand, that this is a monetary issue. This is a supply issue. You have too much money in the system. You gave out too much stimmy checks. You printed way too much money. Now you have inflation. It's not me saying that. It's Milton Friedman saying it. Hear him.
Inflation is made in Washington because only Washington can create money. And any other attribution to other groups of inflation is wrong. Consumers don't produce it. Producers don't produce it. The trade unions don't produce it. Foreign sheiks don't produce it. Oil imports don't produce it. What produces it is too much government spending and too much government creation of money and nothing else.
Now, we just heard Milton Friedman say that. You don't have to take my word for it. But basically what Milton Friedman, Professor Hanky Panky, and myself are saying is that this whole chatter about supply chain is very marginal. It's not the main point. The main point is the financial, fiscal, monetary policy. Now, I know a lot of you will say, well, Tom, we had countries that printed a lot of money and didn't go to inflation. Well, bro, you have the situation like absolutely backwards. Let me explain. Every fireman you're going to see in the street is going to wear a red hat, correct? Correct. Good. So it means you cannot have a fireman without a red hat. Correct? Correct. Does it mean that everybody who wears a red hat is a fireman? No. So it's not like every time you overprint, you cause a massive inflation. But every time there is a massive inflation, it has to actually be predicated by overprinting of money. And when I say printing, obviously I mean what Milton Friedman is saying is creation of money, not specifically like printing. You know what I mean. So I completely agree here with Professor Hanky Panky, but what he's actually saying here is very interesting. He's saying that 2023 is going to be a horrible year, and also probably 2024. By the end of next year, what he's saying, we're still going to be at 5% inflation. So that's end of 2023. So his pace is very close to what I said. Remember, I told you it's going to take 4 years to get out of this. Mr. Hanky is saying the same thing. Look at his chart. 5% end of next year, probably at 4.5 years to get to 2%. Now, what he's saying here is basically two things. Number one, when you have a supply of money problem, you're not going to solve it strictly by increasing rates. Now, it helps. It slows down the market, but just that alone is going to take you years and years to get out of it. You need actually to tighten. You need to reduce balance sheet. But the problem is that reducing balance sheet, there's no demand. If the Fed starts to actively sell mortgage-backed securities and bonds and actively, go hard on this, there's not going to be any demand. They're going to absolutely crush the stock market in a way we haven't seen in a long time. So they have to slowly run off the balance sheet. They can't actually sell. So that takes away one weapon they have. The other weapon is basically, and I don't think Mr. Henke said that specifically, but I'm going to say this. Even on the interest front, he's very limited. Powell, that is, because he can only go just a little bit higher. He cannot go full Volcker because of the debt problem. The U.S. has too much U.S. national debt. If they go too high on interest, the payment for the interest is going to be basically unsustainable, and we'll have to cut it out of, healthcare, R&D, infrastructure, education, whatnot. As it stands, we're already overpaying. Like 1.5% of our GDP goes to just repaying interest. So he has very little weapons, and even those are quite limited in nature, and there's no way he can do it faster than, 3, 4, 5 years. And I completely agree here with Mr. Henke. Finally, Mr. Stephen Roach, and with a name like Roach, there's really 3 jobs you can do, if I think about it, right? You can either be a Navy pilot, Roach, get him, Roach! You can be a mafia member, Stephen DeRoach. Or you can be a banker. So Stephen Roach is actually ex-Morgan Stanley. He was head of Asia for Morgan Stanley. He's a fellow researcher or fellow whatever in Yale. I mean, he's a qualified guy. Don't get me wrong. He knows what he's talking about. He's basically saying we would need a miracle to not go into recession. Now, look, I agree with him here, but let me just tell you something. Now, what he's saying here is very similar to what Mr. Powell said, is basically there's a psychological element here. Once people haven't really fully realized the severity of the situation, they keep spending. And if they keep spending, inflation stays elevated. And only once people realize how bad shit are, they're going to stop spending, and then the recession will come. Hey, it's a valid argument. I'm not going to say it, but basically everything he said is pretty obvious. The one thing I have a problem with, he's saying we would need a miracle not to go into recession. I have a problem with that statement because we need a recession to get out of inflation. There's no way we're getting out of this without a recession, asked Paul Volcker. So I don't really understand what kind of miracle. I mean, is the inflation fairy going to come in and make inflation go away without a recession? Mr. Roach, I just don't understand this.